Well, it was a little town that had mostly white folks, okay? So we're probably the only black people there. We didn't see ourselves as black. We were, hey, all the kids were friends. I was a Cub Scout, then a Boy Scout. My sister was a Brownie. We learned so much about being nice to people. Just being nice. There's nothing wrong in helping the next guy, eating next door with your neighbors, helping out your neighbor's family. It was just all about being nice. And we grew up with this and came home in 2000, well, sorry, not 2000, came home a long time ago. And when we got home, the first thing we did, we went to secondary school in ISI Ibadan, and it was an international school. Of course, at that time, a lot of foreign folks were there too. Nice people, it was nice. Ibadan was great. And then I got my rude shock in life when I got into university. I got into University of Lagos, and then my first week in school, I made friends with this lovely lady, not romantic, we just became pals. And my friends in my room in school said, "What are you doing talking to this lady? You shouldn't be seen with this lady any longer." I said, "Why on earth?" "That she's bad news." "Why is she bad news?" "She was gang raped." I said, "Excuse me?" That she was in Queens, so I won't say the school, she was in a school in Lagos, secondary school. Her ex-boyfriend ganged up with his friends because she dumped him, and they raped her in a room, recorded this rape, pictures, old school video, and sent it everywhere. There was nothing like Instagram or social media then, so it went round by physical picture. And they showed me pictures of my friend's ordeal and expected me to use that as a reason why I should no longer be a friend to this person. But that made me even closer to her. And so I got a real first-hand experience of the trauma woman experienced. She was 15 when she was raped this way, okay? Now, her case was particularly bad because it was exposed. A lot of other women's cases never get exposed, so no one knows what they deal with. Now, moving this a bit forward, I asked questions. I said, why didn't the police arrest these guys? Everyone knows, I mean, the pictures are there. They could be arrested. And she says, how would her family go through the ordeal of going to court with these young men and her face being splashed everywhere? How would that affect her future beyond that moment? And so the system itself, then, I'm talking about 30-something years ago, failed this lady then. And it's failing people till today. All right, it's even gotten worse. But I'll scribble quickly through the motions to let you understand the depth, an idea of the problem we're grappling with in Nigeria. Now, later on, we had something which was, I'll call it a total disruption in the lives of anybody above 40 here. Whoever's below 30 needs to just listen up very well, because it will help you. We were all kids, and all of a sudden, the military government devalued our currency. Our currency was devalued by 500%. And so everybody in the middle class was wiped away. Families were wiped away. Everybody in school, because at that time in Nigeria, yes, there were a few criminals here and there, but majority of the people in Nigeria earned a salary and lived off their pay. There was decency. Kids were brought up with role models who were decent role models. Our role models as kids were people who were doing great in the academics, who were doing great in the UN, people who were earning a salary. Decent folks were our role models. And they were all wiped away in one fell swoop. Because when an economy, when people who are in the middle class, who live a middle class life, have their income divided into 5, they can no longer pay their children's school fees, and the kids drop out of school. From this A-class school, to a B-class school, to a C-class school, to no school at all. Many people took out all the kids from school and kept one, who would be the star of the family and raise the others. And then with this loss of income and loss of the middle class, a lot of people lost their jobs. So some lost their income, some had a lesser income, and then a lot lost their jobs. And so very quickly, these kids were on the streets. Now, that was what I'll call that period Exodus 1 in Nigeria. Those who are old enough know that almost everybody in the middle class scampered to get out. The folks who you hear about in America, whose parents are in America, they all ran away. They all escaped, those that could. So our most brilliant minds, our most dedicated workers, our stars of the 80s and 90s, early 90s, ran away. They couldn't handle the pressure because it was a pressure cooker and everybody was going crazy. Now, those who stayed behind, who couldn't leave, because everyone wanted to leave. Before that time, embassies would take a Nigerian in, and at the border, at the airport, you get your visa. Everything changed. We became the pariah. It wasn't always a 409 state, okay? We had a great country, which we must have again through the things you and I will do together. Now, going further, we now notice that as we're growing up, those who stayed behind, the middle class folks, the people who are at the ladder, didn't suffer that much because at the bottom of the ladder, it can't get much worse. But the guys who were in the middle, who were between the very rich and the very poor, the middle class became poor, like that, and couldn't deal with it. Because you see, in other countries or other places in the world, when you have that kind of shift, you need to see a shrink, a psychiatrist to help you deal with the change of life. Marriages collapsed. So many, nobody did the statistics, but we know that dozens and dozens of people we know, families, marriages collapsed. Economic pressure. Now, the children who were thrown on the streets had to fend for themselves. When they started fending for themselves, some of them worked hard, started doing 3 or 4 jobs, a few of them, but a lot of them went into crime. That's where this 419 thing started. That's the root of it. When kids of the middle class became stranded, and a lot of them went into crime. The male children, the boys, some who went into violent crime lost their lives because there was a military regime. And during the military regime, violent crimes were crushed brutally. Okay? But the lesser crimes, the 409 crimes, all those other crimes, people were doing that and getting away with it because even though the currency had crashed, the laws of the country did not move with them. So many crimes up till today have a 500 Naira fine. I don't know if you know this. Many crimes have a 500 Naira fine because 500 Naira, when the law was made, was 500 pounds. Okay? So a lot of folks committed crimes, went to court, got a 6-month jail term or a 500 Naira fine, which they paid at the spot and walked free. Now, the girls, on the other hand, were a bigger challenge. The girls weren't doing the 419, but we had an explosion in prostitution. We had an explosion in the military high command who was ruling Nigeria at the time. Those were the big boys, so to speak, the Milads, all those, whoever knows that knows what I'm talking about. And the contractors who worked with them were the people who had the money. Government folks were broke, okay? I mean, real government workers, civil servants were broke. Salaries did not change. Getting to the point, Exodus, girls in school, fending for themselves, not doing 2-3 jobs, but living off men. Standard. Everyone came to accept it. This became the norm. Politics came in, wonderful. Naira stabilized. Middle class started to come back. Thank you, Lord. But over this period, more and more cases, because we lost kids who were born at the time of the crunch, didn't have the kind of upbringing that's required to bring out the kind of characters we need to build a nation. So we lost a whole generation of people without the basic home training that's needed. And we who are employers of labor, anyone who's an employer of labor knows that in getting people in, we're dealing with a crisis of where we have employees who believe in crime. Employees who, because of the evil of those years, look at every person who is wealthy or successful as the way Robin Hood is. Robin Hood days where if we steal from the rich, no wahala. And so there's a kind of cult-like attitude where employees get together, rob their employers, and it's okay. No one. If anybody speaks out against that employee, he's a snitch. Imagine that. Where people collectively believe that they should rob their employers. Now, in our experience, most of the cases that we found were men doing this. A few ladies, yes, but mostly men. And so down the road, we had started to investigate this. Why don't we get more women employed? Why don't we try to encourage more women into our business? This came as a policy that, hey, let's get more women involved. Let's do this, let's do this. And then the real punch came when Exodus 2 came. Exodus 2 was when the Naira now crashed 100% 2 years ago. And most people who were 30 and below were crying blood. Above 40, it was nothing, because you've seen it 500% loss. So this is child's play. But who knows tomorrow? Do we want to wait till a third Exodus? No, we can't afford to. So what do we do? For us as a company, we need to get women into the business and fast. How do we do that? Let's train them. But if we train only the girls we need, why don't we train more people? Why don't we help more people? Let's do this. So we come up with this idea that we'll train 100 people per state. We'll get people involved, get governments involved, get other people who are interested in helping involved. We have the expertise, 26 years of business. We do it for free. We're not charging the girls a penny, okay? So we're not looking for every girl in the streets. We're looking for girls who are in vulnerable situations, the rape victims, the ex, whatever. Well, I won't say that here on the stage, but people who've been through it, who've been there. Single moms who have been abandoned by everybody. Bring them. And we got hundreds of people come forward in Lagos State for our first edition, and it's been going very well. The others will be launched shortly, and you'll need to be on all the networks. I have 2 minutes left. Okay, now the second Exodus we have to avoid. We need to get other people, every single business person, anybody who is doing something in business, we need you guys to rise up to the challenge. We can't just keep on waiting for the government. Rise up to the challenge, help people, collaborate, like the lady said before. Let's get people together to help the young people who are on the streets. Get them, if whatever you do, train them. Let's find ways to equip them. Let's get them off the streets. Because if you wait for government, you wait forever. The financial inclusion man came here and said something very important, but I'll tell you something he didn't say. On the streets, Nigeria's money is not what they say in paper. The Nigerian money on the streets is 10% per month. That's the borrowing rate in Nigeria. The money that's bandied about is not available. The money on the streets, the bank rate you see 30%, great. The money on the street is 10% per month. So before you guys get fancy, we need to address this. We need our government, our people, to invest in our people. If America can give its people credit cards and credit of billions of dollars, we should give our people credit. No bank should be earning 100 billion naira profit in a country where the people of the country cannot borrow a penny. No bank should give $1.5 billion to one company, Etisalat. $1.5 billion to an Arab company that's worth $10 billion. Why should our banks gather their money and give to one obliger without security? When all of us, we have people across the country needing support, and the government won't support us. The government must support the people. It must be an executive fiat that all banks must dedicate XYZ of their portfolio to supporting business people without this funny security talks that people talk. Let the money be lost. Let Nigeria lose $1.5 billion in our people instead of losing it with Etisalat. Right? So I gotta go. I think they said, but time's up. I gotta go.